It is currently midnight on a Wednesday, so I guess it's Thursday morning now. We got a truck getting towed in from Florida. Pretty 4th gen here. One of his main concerns is this turbocharger code, and if you see, we can floor it, and the truck is extremely underpowered. And then now, at the higher RPM, it starts building some boost and you can move. But it should be much more responsive than that. Right now we're cruising at 60, and I'm gonna floor it. And we have no power on this thing. Oh, there we go, finally getting some boost. We're gonna be doing some AC work on this truck, and I wanted to confirm that the fan clutch operated. These trucks from the factory have a pretty ignorant way to test the fan clutch. You have to like ground one of the wires going to the fan and rev it up for 15 minutes. The way we found to trick the ECM is to unplug the coolant temperature sensor and just go rev the engine up, and if the fan kicks in, that's about as good a test as you can come up with. You can see the coolant temperature is no longer registering, and the truck thinks, well, if I can't read the coolant temperature, I might as well command the fan clutch 100%. So we'll rev the engine up. You can definitely hear that fan clutch is kicking in, so that's about the best test you can do on these. We have one time in the past had a truck where we did unplug the coolant temperature sensor and it would not command the fan clutch. We had to use a resistance box to tell the ECM that the truck was overheating, so we ended up getting the temperature at like 240 degrees with the resistance box, and then it commanded the fan clutch and it was good to go. That is one of the more frustrating things about working on these Cummins trucks, is that you cannot command the fan clutch with the scanner. On a GM and a Ford, you can go in there and command the pulse width modulation up and down, and it'll turn the fan clutch up and down, and it's real easy to confirm that you have a working fan clutch. Here we're just doing our digital vehicle inspection, and this battery terminal's loose. On these trucks that have the intercooler that's below the radiator, in order to drain the cooling system, you get you a 3/8 ratchet with a 16mm socket and take the power steering reservoir off. Then you can get onto the coolant drain down there. These systems take forever to gravity drain, and I'm impatient, so put a couple of pounds of coolant pressure in here with our coolant pressure tester, and that'll force all the coolant out of the system. Here we're using a test strip that BG offers to test the acidity level and the glycol percentage of this coolant. It's pretty common for these trucks' coolant to degrade over time, and you can see this one definitely fails and needs to be replaced. Now that we have the coolant drain, I went ahead and removed this inner fender liner so we can access this turbocharger actuator. We're going to have to pull all the bolts out of it and pull it off. The reason you have to drain the coolant is because coolant flows through this actuator, and if you do not drain the coolant, you'll pull this off and coolant will spill inside the electronic portion of this and destroy it immediately. So we need to find out if this actuator is bad or if the turbo's bad or what's going on here. So got the coolant drain, now we can take all the bolts out and pop this thing off. We've had really good luck with these Synapse turbocharger actuators. Do you see what I see? That's no bueno. This is the part where you say a little prayer. We're gonna get down in here and heat up the back side of that cast iron housing with a torch, try and get these bolts out of this actuator. Obviously there's not enough room for me to film what I just did, but she come loose though. She's got 3 left. This one is not being so good. We've already heated it up with the torch, so we're going to try the crayon trick where you heat it up and then you melt this down into the threads, and it's supposed to loosen it up. Michael says green tastes the best, so we're going to use it. I guess Michael was right after all. Yeehaw. You're going to need a glove now because she is poquito caliente. Which those of you not fluent in Tex-Mex means a little warm. See? Smoke. That pink residue on the side is coolant that was leaking. You can also see it was getting past the seal here on the mounting surface. We remove the turbocharger actuator, and the vanes are not stuck, which means that the actuator is the problem. We need to get that looking a little better. A little Scotch-Brite overhaul got her looking right. And I fat-fingered the order for the VGT actuator. This is the earlier style. And I need to get this cooling system flush so we can start pulling the dash. So I need to bolt this back up to the turbocharger so we can seal off this coolant passage here while we're waiting on the new actuator to show up. Look at how disgusting that coolant has become. Ewy. And all that stuff plugs up that heater core. Real nasty like. The main reason this customer wanted us to pull the dash out of this truck is because he's not getting any heat out of the vents. And we come over here and we're looking at the left side temperature actuator, and we're going to adjust it here on the dash from 60 all the way to full hot, and you'll see that reading increase from 68 to full hot. And then this is the actual position sensor, and you can see it changed as well. So we know the blend door is actually moving the door inside the dash, and I can hear on both sides. You can't hear it on the phone, but whenever I adjust the temperature, I can hear those doors moving, and then you'll hear it like come to the stop and then just go just a little more. So I'm quite confident that the actuators themselves are both working properly and that the doors are not broken. These trucks are known for the coolant degrading in the cooling system and clogging the heater core. This customer, while he had the truck all the way from Florida here in Texas, he decided to go ahead and pull the dash and replace the blend doors with the billet blend doors from Blend Door USA, and have us go ahead and replace the heater core instead of just flushing the system. We are going to flush the cooling system prior to pulling the dash out so that we don't get any of the contaminants into the new heater core. Went ahead and took the upper radiator hose off. Ewy. That's disgusting. Now we're flushing it through the upper radiator hose, and you can see how disgusting that coolant is coming back out of there. And then we have this air-powered tool that we can pulse the air going to the system. Look at that nasty stuff. It's gonna take a minute. Now that we've made a substantial mess, she's looking nice and clean. Homie gave me these tools that he says they use at SpaceX. I prefer to use a hood lamp to illuminate my workspace. Sheesh. I bent these out a little bit so that there's an air gap between the rod and the headliner. There's a couple of bolts down here for the center console, and the easiest way to get those is with this tight reach extension. And so we got a 10mm socket down there, and as I turn it here, it turns there. Now that we got the bolts out and all the electrical connections undone, you can just slide this whole console back, just pull it back, and then tip it up and out of your way. Ooh, a piece of candy. And the next thing we need to do to take this dash out of here is, God, Michael, no, bad Michael, no, bad Michael, go away. We got the column out of the truck, and it's important that you do not rotate this. You put it back in the same spot, because if you jack around, you think it's fun to spin the wheel, you'll break the clock spring, and then you'll have a bad day. There it is, got the dash all out. We have it sitting on the seats here with fender covers to keep the seats protected. And then we also have straps holding it to the headrest so that it stays put while we remove this HVAC housing. One of the customer's other concerns was that he reached up in here and broke this door. You can see that wonderful zip tie work. That's a pretty common failure point on these trucks. Service information says you have to pull the coolant reservoir, but that's a bunch of baloney. All you gotta do is take that nut off there and that one over there. There's old girl in all her glory. Looks pretty clean compared to most of these trucks. You can see this foam. It's not in bad shape, but it does come apart, and that foam seals these doors, so whenever that foam deteriorates, it'll allow air to bypass the door and they don't cool as well. No matter how many times I've done this, I always take 360-degree pictures all the way around so I can reference the wire routing whenever I go to put it back together and know that everything, most time it lays in place pretty good, but sometimes they run these wires behind the actuator or something like that, and I just want to make sure that it goes back the way that it's supposed to. This truck's already been updated, or it came from the factory with this, but there is a cabin air filter that it needs to be changed. It's a little dirty. This one was a factory one because it's got a nice clean cut edge here. Some of these trucks from the factory don't come with this cutout, and so you can install it, but you have to come in here with a knife and cut this out and then put that filter in there. Went ahead and cut the tank off of this heater core. The reason the heater on these trucks doesn't work is the heater flow will come in here. It'll take the path of least resistance where all this crud falls to the bottom, and it'll just run through these top few tubes and back out the other side. And so your heater won't work because only a few of the tubes will be flowing, if they flow at all. This other side's even more disgusting than the first. This is the inside of the evaporator core. You can see all those little tiny channels. It is fittingly named a micro-channel heat exchanger. Each one of these is an individual tube that runs from one end to the other. This is why you cannot flush these, because all the metal debris, this is all metal from cutting it with a saw, but all that metal debris gets stuck in those tubes, so you can't flush these things out. There's also oil that gets stuck in the evaporator core, and you can't get that out, so we will have to add oil to the system whenever we go back together. This is what we got going on for parts on our HVAC housing overhaul. We got a new recirculation door assembly because this is the only way they sell it. Our billet blend doors from Blendor USA, very nice product. Mopar heater core, 5 new Mopar actuators, Mopar evaporator core, expansion valve, and a foam kit for the firewall. Don't get no better than that. I definitely spoke too soon. This is not coming off as easy. Got our pieces all cleaned up here, looking right. Now it's just a big jigsaw puzzle. Put all this and all that. Before we put the evaporator core or the heater core into the truck, we're gonna go ahead and pressure test these, because nothing would suck worse than putting this whole thing together just to find out this thing was either assembled wrong or damaged during shipping, and one of these swivel fittings has a leak or something like that. This thing, most evaporator cores get sent with pressure inside of them, but these Mopar ones do not. So we have no way of knowing if it holds pressure until we test it. Michael's got some pressure on her. She go around and spray this old girl down, make sure she's not leaking anywhere. Small flex, I guess, but if you go to their website and you click on the installation video, that's Paul. That's my employee. Better go subscribe. This wind is a bit ridiculous today. Bye-bye. It's a good idea to actuate these doors by hand and make sure they don't touch anywhere they shouldn't. Sometimes these housings can be cast just a little bit different, and you don't want to have to pull this back out for fun, I assure you. Now we gotta take apart this brand new recirculation door. Pop this sucker out of here. Gotta get rid of that plastic titty, because that's not good enough. Now that the titty's gone, now we can apply our template for the hole drilling. And now we have an aluminum door driver, so this will never fail again. I will say that I am not overly enthused about how little engagement that aluminum piece has with the drive, so we're going to shim this door over this way to get that engagement better. We added a 5/16 washer down on the right hand side, and now our shaft has full penetration. You do also have to clearance this side of the housing for the screw heads. That's a solid repair right there. That'll never break again. The case halves on this thing are held together with these little snaps and screws, and from the factory you can see that one's got where a screw hole used to be. They have provisions here and here for screws, but they don't actually have any. This case, this little piece snapped off here when I was taking it apart. It's just extremely brittle, so I'm going to go ahead and utilize these two, and I'm going to put 2 screws in here to hold this together. Like it should have been from the factory, old son. There's 2 more here we're going to do. I had to dump out the random screw assortment, and I got a few matching screws. Anyway, it may not be perfect, but it's better than it was. Oh no. What do we have here? Daggum heater core ain't. The tubes aren't bent right. These should both be the exact same height here. And since the core is not flush with the housing, we know that this tube is the one that's bent wrong. We're gonna just bend it up a little bit to get this to sit flush where it's supposed to be. You don't really want to just go mashing these down in there and putting the screws in it and slapping it in the truck, because if you preload this, well, over time it can crack, but it does have an O-ring in there, and so if you cock this thing a little bit, you could cause a leak there. So I've had plenty of good luck with just bending the lines and stuff working out just fine. And when you look at the heater core from the side, it does look like this 90-degree elbow is just a little bit overbent, causing that line to be a little lower than it should be. That's how they're supposed to be. All we got to do is put our little retention piece on here and these are good to go. Mira, arrow is direction of airflow. Man, those factory covers snap so nice. This is the evaporator drain, and this is the factory grommet that was on there. And these over time get squished down, and then water drains out of here, and as you're driving down the road, that water will run back up here. And if that seal's not good, that water will run straight down in the floorboard. So we got a nice new factory one. Here's our finished product, ready to go back into the vehicle. Got the heater hoses put on there with the heat shrink hose clamps. They're still warm. This is the Black Market Performance heater hose upgrade. Gets rid of that plastic elbow here that likes to fail. Got our new foam here, here, there. This outlet came with the foam on it, and then we had to put the foam there. But all the wiring harness is secured as it would be from the factory. All the sensors are plugged in. All the screws are in their holes. Got the cabin filter. Just double check your work always, but this thing looks ready to go. And with that, we are going to call it a night. You can see here our service information tells us if we replace the AC evaporator core, we need to add 2 ounces of oil to the system to make up for that lost oil whenever you remove that component. Time for your medicine. Snagged us some new seals for the expansion valve connection. It would have been a better idea to inject this dye into the evaporator core while it was on the workbench. The oil does get distributed throughout the entire AC system, no matter if you put all 6 ounces into the compressor. But, so we have this oil injection tool here. It goes on the low side port, and it's a syringe, and we can put all 2 ounces here back into the system. It will go into the suction line, so whenever we charge the AC system, we need to make sure and turn the compressor as if it was a brand new AC system to disperse some of that oil before starting the system. This high side service port is an actual fitting that unscrews from the line, but it's important that we put a wrench on the line to back it up so we don't twist that little bitty aluminum tube. These are our old service fittings. That's the low side port, and this is the high side. You can see that O-ring is deformed, probably from not having any lube put on it when it was installed from the factory. A little bit of refrigerant oil on the O-rings will ensure that whenever we put them in, they don't get damaged. We got a 2-hour vacuum going on this thing. And while it's doing its thing, we're going to go ahead and reassemble the interior here. Let's see how loose that turbocharger inlet hose was. Oh my goodness. That's pretty loose. Well, she's all back together and we don't have any extra hardware, so we did our job right. I was just under the dash zip tying some wires up out of the way. I found Kermit the Frog. He's dead.
He needs some milk.
R.I.P. buddy. This was our haul. Ended up getting 87 cents and a pearl ear ring. I know from experience this water neck is going to look like garbage when we clean up this mating surface. You can see some of the pitting where the O-ring rides. This one's not so bad, but we can make it better. Don't that look nice? You know, we got that genuine 180-degree Cummins thermostat put in here. I did put quite a bit of heat into this housing to get these bolts cracked loose, so I'm going to replace these rubber coolant washers here. There's a chance they're all right, but if they seep, then I'm going to look like an ass, so we're going to replace them. Now I will be able to sleep at night. Got that about as clean as we can in the truck with just some Scotch-Brite, and then all we have to do is just rotate this as far clockwise as it'll go, and the hole is lined up for the actuator. Now we just pop our new one on here after we learn it. I really despise these little felt pads. A lot of times they cause a lot of problems because they're pretty thick, you know, it's at least an 1/8 inch or better, and battery terminals, I don't know if you can see it, but they're tapered. They're smaller at the top than they are at the base, and so this thing needs to go down as far as possible to get that stud or that lead terminal to protrude through the top of this battery terminal, and this thing will oftentimes prevent that from happening. This truck already has AGM batteries, which do not have the same problems that require, they don't have the leaking acid problems that normal lead acid batteries have, so these things are pointless to begin with. So we're going to do away with these and install these terminals properly. Loosen this bolt enough so that this thing can spread. You get like a 19mm socket. Look at that. Now we can tighten that bolt and that thing will be on there properly. Got their reverse osmosis water. When we're filling the cooling system, I'll typically start with 1 gallon of coolant, 1 gallon of water, and then I will transition into mixing it before installing it. So we've got this 4,000 milliliter container here. I'll fill it up halfway with water and the other halfway with coolant. And then we get a perfect 50-50 mixture. Now we got to do a Banks ram air intake to get rid of that grid heater, and we're going to run the valves on the engine. Here we're disconnecting the rail pressure sensor on the back of the rail. Banks does not want you to do this for obvious reasons. It's a pain in the ass, but I don't want to leave the rail exposed to dirt and debris, so we're going to disconnect this thing, which is being a pain in the butt. Finally. That is not for the faint of heart, but now we can take the entire rail out with the fuel lines attached and not chance getting dirt and debris down inside the rail. I'm taking off the 2 bolts from the bracket on the back of the head so I can get off the number 6 injection line. This is so much fun. There's the rail out in its entirety, only missing the number 1. Much easier than taking all the lines off in the truck. Now that we've got the rail out, there's a bunch of debris down here between the intake plenum and the cylinder head that we couldn't blow out whenever we first started working on the truck because all the fuel lines were here, and this big foam cover right here was down in here covering all this up. So we're gonna make sure and blow all this out so we don't get any debris down inside the engine. We've also got these red caps over the connector feed tubes to prevent dirt and debris getting inside the fuel system. There it is with her top off. We're gonna vacuum out all that debris that fell down the cylinder head there. And I'm tired of bending over, so now it's Michael's turn to bend over and clean all this up. This is the Banks kit all laid out. They come with a new intake plenum, the horn, and some miscellaneous hardware. Banks tells you to remove the engine cover and then reinsert the dipstick. Do not do that. You'll end up laying on the dipstick trying to do all this work and you'll break it off unless you feel like buying a new dipstick. Once you've got the rail out, it's a good time to go ahead and check the torque on your connector feed tubes. Oftentimes when you break the fuel lines loose, it'll rotate that nut, and then if you put it back together without checking it, you can cause a high pressure fuel leak. These are 37 foot-pounds on this truck. This 1/8 inch MPT plug is like way too loose in the bore. I can run that all the way through, whereas these other ones tightened up with protrusion. Like those are really tight. And so we're going to try and find a different plug for this hole. Sometimes somebody might have got a little carried away tapping the hole out. Went to the bin, got another plug. We're going to see. This one already feels much better. So it was just a bad plug, that's all. Got a little PTFE put on there. And there we are. Nice cleaning job, Michael. I just dropped the plenum down onto the cylinder head. And we're going to go ahead and run the valves on the engine because it's easier to get your wrench in here to adjust things without all the fuel lines and stuff in the way. So we're going to take advantage of having all this apart to make it easier on our life setting the valve lash. So we learned something new today. If this line is not on here and tight, these rails will leak out the side where it's not welded there. I don't know why. I don't have a spare rail to cut apart, but I called my buddy Matthew Parker with Parker's Diesel Performance, and he said that's totally normal. So you learn something new every day. The other reason I don't like taking these lines off like Banks suggests is that these are like, I don't know why Cummins redesigned these lines, but this thing will just keep dirt and debris down in these little channels here after 200,000 miles of driving, and you go to take that nut off, and all that dirt and stuff, no matter how well you blow this out with brake clean and stuff, can get down in the rail, which it's cleanable, but to the average guy that's not going to think twice about it, he's going to take that nut off, drop a bunch of dirt down inside the rail, and then reassemble it, and then now he's got high return on his injectors, and the truck doesn't run right, all because he was doing an intake heater. Apple sealant. Whoever wrote these instructions didn't proofread it. That should be tight. Nope, should be right. And then, come on guys, put the dipstick in the right way. So his transmission dipstick is hitting his Black Market Performance fuel filter housing because the Banks intake relocates the dipstick here, so we have to drill a new hole to keep it up off of there so we don't rub a hole through there. Now, we got clearance. There's the new bolt hole. The factory hole, pretty loose. Oh, pretty tight. And that is the Banks kit installed. I routed this up and around here like they said and re-drilled the hole and trimmed off the eyelet so it looks nice and good. Got 2 zip ties holding it here for support so that this stud doesn't come loose or fatigue over time. And that's pretty much it. Pretty straightforward. That's what we after, boys and girls. Nothing but the green. Got to go in here and recalibrate all the doors. And we show passed on all these, so we're good. The bottom temperature is the vent temperature, almost down into the 30s. That's pretty good for a 4th gen. Alright, it's 83 degrees outside today, and I'm running around with the heater for a damn video, but we got almost 160 degree vent temperature. This thing's showing like 170. That's about enough of that. Now, I'm not going to floor it on the 0 to 60 test, but this is like 3/4 throttle. The turbo works much better now that the vanes operate properly. We dipped the coolant reservoir and we're just below 50-50, so I'll add a little bit more coolant. While I was double checking all the work we did, I found this little guy just dangling here, and it should be snapped onto that shifter cable. We didn't touch it though. Well, we've got right at 150 miles on this thing since we did the repair. There's no codes related to any of the work we did. That code was there when we took the truck apart. No leaks. Engine's running good. We're just final checking the transmission fluid level and you'll send her on home. I had Michael give this thing a hand wash job. Ah, dang. We gotta clean all this up yet too. They don't call him Magic Mike for nothing. With that, this old girl is ready to go back to Florida.